Since we talked a lot about semicolons in the run-on sentences lecture, I wanted to spend some time just talking about semicolons on their own because I know that they can be a little bit intimidating, but they are a tool and I want you to know how to use them. So there are 3 times when you can use a semicolon. You can use it to link independent clauses, you can use it in serial lists, and you can use it with conjunctive adverbs. This one, the independent clauses, should be familiar to you because it's from the run-on sentences question. So this is when you have 2 independent clauses or complete sentences and they're butted up against each other. So in this case, it's when you have a semicolon instead of using a period or fanboys to pull 2 independent clauses together. You want to do this when those sentences are so inextricably connected to each other that they cannot be pulled apart. So you don't want to overuse them. You want to use them when they are effective and help make clarity. Another type of semicolon use is a serial list. This is where you have a more complicated list than just using a series like of adjectives. In this case, you may want to have commas involved. Generally, if your list involves commas that aren't dividing up the items in your list, that's when you want to bring in a serial comma or serial semicolon. So, for instance, let's say you have a number of places that you visited where you include both the city and the state. That involves all of these commas. So instead of having all of these multiple commas where we don't know exactly what goes with what, we use a comma between the city and the state and make our list using semicolons to demarcate the different items in the list. So another question I sometimes get when students are setting up a list like this. So here we have a list. I visited Topeka, Kansas, blah, blah, blah. Another way you can set up a list is also to use colon. And so when you have, you can set up these lists by combining a colon and semicolons for when you have a dependent clause beginning the sentence. So instead of saying I visited, that's an independent clause. So we don't want to use a colon here. Instead, here are some of the places I have visited, colon, and then you have your list. It's kind of like when you have a introduction of some sort, that's when you bring in the colon. I always think, can Will Smith go like this and put his arms up and say like, ta-da! That's when you want to pull out your colon. They introduce something. So you can use it to introduce lists, things I love, butter, butter, and more butter. You can use it to introduce quotes. In the words of the late, great Thich Nhat Hanh, breathe, you are alive. You can also use a colon to create an emphasis of some sort. This is the key to surviving college. Go to class. So think of Will Smith showing off what's to come. After that little interruption by our colons, let's get back to our semicolons. Another use of a semicolon is when you are using a conjunctive adverb. The kind of quintessential situation is when you use a however. These conjunctive adverbs must be connecting to complete sentences or complete independent clauses too. So if you have a conjunctive adverb that links 2 independent clauses, you should use a semicolon. So in this case, I've always been a fan of jazz, semicolon, however, comma, I hate Keith Jarrett. So that semicolon, we have 2 independent clauses divided by what they call a conjunctive adverb. Well, what are these conjunctive adverbs? This isn't a whole list, but basically it's these kinds of words. They are adverbs. Additionally, also beside, however is really the key one that you see a lot. I used to use indeed a whole bunch, and I've been trying not to. But these are some words, and I have this on my grammar, editing and grammar handout that I'll make available. So, the way to think about semicolons is to think of it as the perfect combination of periods and commas. They often are about creating a sense of demarcation between ideas while also retaining that sense of fluidity between ideas. And I love them. And I think, though, because I love them, I try not to overdo it because I want them to have an impact when I actually do use them. Okay, happy semicolon.